welcome to the channel. I'm Kay and I am back with the pumpkin guide again because it got fed again, you guys. This greedy pumpkin, it got fed not once but twice by ILNP. We got some good stuff in here because ILNP sent over their Twisted collection and also the Thorns collection as PR. And so the Twisted collection consists of 6 magnetic polishes in some really cool colors. And then we got the Thorns collection, which is a 4-piece set of studio color jellies. And before we got to digging through this, if you're new to ILNP, they are 7-free. They're also cruelty-free and vegan in case you like to support these things. So with that out of the way, let's get to digging through this, and then I will be back with the good, the bad, and the prugly. Let's pick out our first polish, which is Radioactive from the Twisted collection. Just a heads up that I am sometimes looking away when I pick out the polishes. That way I can't see if it's a Thorns or Twisted one, but we got Radioactive here, which is one of 2 polishes that seemingly have the same orange shimmer in the base. I did look at them side by side, and while there is a small difference in brightness, the color looks extremely similar. But of course, we do get different company when it comes to the magnetic pigment, which is a lime green color in Radioactive. It's so interesting how that alone creates such different looks, especially unmagnetized. Here, you're getting all of that green just happily taking over the nail, mixing in with those orange shimmers that create some visual interest too. But let's move on to its next stage of evolution and magnetize it to reveal and put all of that orange shimmer on full display. This style reminds me of those caramel dipped green apples. It kind of just has that color scheme, and notice how the magnetic pull is nice and strong. We got a lot of magnetic pigment here, so the line is super visible. Let's put it through the horseshoe magnet to get an entirely different effect though. Just look at that intensity of the color and the brightness, but then when you shift the nail, that orange warmth kind of grounds you a little bit before you're catapulted right back into that radioactive eye-searing green sheen. And with this one swatched and our eyes smoking, let's pick out our next polish. And we are going in for the next one, which is Distorted from the Twisted collection. Interestingly enough, Distorted is the other polish in this collection that carries orange shimmer. However, the magnetic pigment differs, so let's break this one down. You're likely noticing all of that blue. It's very hard to miss. So in Distorted, the blue holds the magnetic power, and that pigment really takes over the nail. In my personal opinion, I do think Distorted is one of the polishes in this collection that looks great unmagnetized. It basically looks like an indigo-ish base color that leans more towards blue, but you also see those specks of orange shimmer throughout, and there are a lot of them, which make for a really nice contrast of colors there. Now here's the end result, and this is why I think this polish looks great unmagnetized. It just looks very cohesive as it is. However, let us play with the science, aka a magnet, which causes a Pokemon style evolution into its visual upgrade, where we're left with the orange shimmer in the background and that electrifying blue glow in the front. It almost looks like blue mist or fog, and I think it's because of how tiny those magnetic particles are. It just looks kind of unreal. However, let's move on to the next evolution with the horseshoe magnet and let that blue pigment take over the nail, just hovering right above the orangey shimmery background. Now head on, you get that flash of blue, which is just out of this world, you guys. It's so obvious and strong. I think the contrasting color combo does wonders in helping both of these colors pop. Here we go with the next one up, which is Ivy from the Thorns collection. We have our first Thorns collection polish, which is Ivy. It is the green jelly of the bunch. ILNP describes it as a deep ivy green, and that green tone is definitely there and visible on the first coat. It's very rich, like a mysterious gothic green, but the green is noticeably blackened out when you apply that second coat, which is really necessary with these jellies because they don't look presentable in just one coat. My eyes can still tell that there's some green in there. Like, imagine off-white colors. This is like an off-black color with a few drips of green. I think that's a good way to explain it. And if I turn on the strong direct light, it's almost like it looks even darker and blacker, which is a bit of a bummer because the actual green color is so sultry and elegant, but after that second coat, it's just really not there anymore. And I can't help but wonder what would happen if I tried to dilute this formula with thinner, possibly allowing me to wear it in one coat and then actually be able to perceive that pretty green color that is currently just hiding in there. Digging back into the pumpkin, and next up is Madhouse from the Twisted collection. Are you even ready for Madhouse? Because this one is a showstopper. This is the green and purple color combo of the collection, two colors that are just symbolic, right, of Halloween, in my opinion at least, with the green color holding that magnetic power. And in the unmagnetized state, you can get a nice preview of just how much magnetic pigment ILNP threw in there, because that green really does hog the nail. It just pretty much takes over. You do get some sight of those purple shimmers, but it is very minimal. Keep in mind that even if your nail looks nicely covered in the first coat like mine, a second one will really deepen and saturate it, and also just ensure that once you apply the magnet, you're not left with any weird bald spots. Make sure to appreciate all that green while we have it now, because I'm about to pull out the magnet and take this polish to another level. It is the shimmer, you guys. Look at that purple element-filled backdrop. It's like substantial. That's the word that comes to mind. It has substance. There's purple stuff in there, and it works deliciously with that limey green magnetic line. It was so hard to not contact ILNP and see if they sell this one in gallons, and as much as I would like to let this clip run, we do have to move on to the velvet style and transform it yet again, where the green makes a strong comeback. It's really so much brighter than the unmagnetized green. If I could describe this with a flavor, it'd be sour. It's that type of green, but then just beneath it is that purple waiting for you to angle your nail so that it can peek through alongside the green and create one of the best color combos to ever exist, in my opinion. This polish is a 10 out of 10 in my eyes. What will we get next? It is Electro Shock from the Twisted collection. Here we have electroshock starting in its unmagnetized state, and what you're seeing are molten gold shimmers mixed with teal magnetic pigment, which makes for a pretty striking color combo, especially because the golden tone we get here has depth to it. It's not a pale gold color, so I think ILNP did a great job going with this specific golden tone. You may have noticed that first coat was a little bit more sheer than the other polishes in this collection, but as I move on, you can already tell that laying down the second coat should be enough to provide that full coverage and really see all that this polish has to offer. It's really at this second coat that the teal starts to become a lot more visible, which at the same time allows the golden shimmers to come through and pop as well. So here we have the end result of electroshock unmagnetized. Is kind of giving a bit of a tropical color scheme. Also notice how there's this surprise shift to purple there at more extreme angles, which you'll also see in the magnetic styles. But let me take you from teal to gold because that is exactly what a magnet does. So remember I mentioned the depth of the golden tone. This is what I mean. It looks a little antique-y, which just allows that teal color to pop how it's meant to. And as I move the nail around, you can also catch sight of the purple color right up next to the teal. Lastly, let's check out the velvet style, where that teal just blankets itself over that golden background. But I did notice this polish reacted a little bit different to others in this collection, in that it didn't seem to give me that flash of magnetic pigment when I looked at my nail head on. The magnetic pigment in this one just kind of leaned to the side for some reason, but the shift is still definitely visible. Let's move on in the swatch sesh. Next up is Midnight Ink from the Thorns collection. Midnight Ink is, as you can imagine, the blue of the Thorns collection, and it starts off in a really darkened state already, probably even more so than the other Thorns polishes. So I can't help but feel a sense of familiarity. I feel like I know exactly where this polish is taking me and where it's gonna drop me off. So you can see what I mean here, because any trace of blue is almost erased, very similar to what happened with Ivy, and we have arrived basically at a true blackened blue, and I am highlighting the word blackened here. If these jellies weren't opaque, let's say they were the glassy, more translucent type of jelly, the deepening of the color would have worked better, in my opinion, in that I don't think we would have gotten so much loss of color. But that's coming from a person who's never made nail polish before, and I still think there's people out there that like these really off black tones. That's what I'm calling these. I know, and you know, and we know, everyone that's watching knows that there is color in there because we saw it in the first coat, but it seems to be unable to survive and push through that second coat, probably because of the opacity of the formula. So it's a very pretty blue, but you can't really see it. Let's get back to picking, and next up is Nightshade from the Thorns collection. Nightshade is the purple of the Thorns collection, and it's described by the brand as a blackened eggplant purple shade, which I agree with because as I'm laying down that first coat, I can definitely see that tone of purple, but I'm also noticing the depth or darkness of the color that we have here, which completely starts to take over the purple as I apply that second coat. I think that describing this color as a blackened eggplant starts to make a lot more sense now because it's basically a purple that turned black. That second coat pretty much removes any perceivable purple tone. And if I turn on this strong direct light source, you can see that there's not really much color here at all outside of the edges of where I applied the polish. So keeping in mind that this is how it looks under strong lighting, you can imagine that this looks basically black in regular lighting. I'd say if you're a dark purple lover, don't really expect to see much of any purple and nightshade after 2 coats. It really just looks like a black shade with a very minimal, and I am highlighting minimal, tint of purple. And we are going right back in. It looks like next up is Overload from the Twisted collection. Overload was honestly such a fun surprise to me. So let's break it down starting from the ground up. We seem to have a black base filled with silver magnetic particles and multicolored shimmers, which unmagnetized look absolutely perfect. This is one of those magnetics in this collection that looks extra cohesive unmagnetized because it basically takes on this gunmetal color with some pops of rainbow sparkle, all thanks to those shimmers. And you can start to see that a lot more clearly now that I'm moving on to the second coat. Mind you, of course, you can wear any of these polishes in any way you'd like, but there are just some magnetics that look just a little bit better than others unmagnetized, and the end result is so cool. I am fully digging this look. The rainbow pops aren't super loud. They're there, but I feel like they're kind of composed. As nice as it is though, let me show you what a magnet does to it. So suddenly that silver magnetic pigment pulls inward and you're left with a completely black background showing off all those colorful shimmers, which is so fun. Even though the size of those shimmers is pretty small, we do get enough of them to make them visible. Now let me put the horseshoe magnet on it so that you can see how the silver pigment creates a pretty strong sheen over the black rainbow that lies underneath. And it's really interesting because as dark as Overload is, it's actually refreshing to see it in a collection where there's already so much color. This one just stands out, but it also still fits in perfectly. Returning to the pumpkin for Dahlia, this is the last polish of the Thorns collection. This jelly is like the red of the Thorns collection. ILNP describes it as a dark maroon, and I think they are spot on. The red color on that first coat is so beautiful. It feels very romantic, and I was excited to see all of this color since the other colors in the collection have been very blackened out. When I moved on to the second coat, there is a noticeable deepening of the red, which is to be expected. Of course, it does visibly blacken out to an extent, but at first glance you can still perceive that there's color in this formula, which is a little bit of the opposite effect that you get from the other polishes in the Thorns collection. Let me put it this way, the amount of depth and blackening of color that we get in Dahlia is what I expected from the entire Thorns collection. You know, basically dark tones that still allow your eyes to register color, but it kind of feels to me that Dahlia was the only Thorns polish to actually deliver that. We still have one tree left, which is Mood Ring from the Twisted collection. I can tell you right now that Mood Ring has my heart. It's kind of breathtaking, unmagnetized, but let me break this down. So here we have a pink magnetic pigment mixing in with a glowing blue shimmer. However, The particle size of the blue shimmer seems like it's smaller from other polishes in this collection. We'll see that more clearly when I magnetize it, but all of this pink and blue together create this striking look. Blue is of course the dominating color, but you can clearly see those pinky particles that actually look a little bit more purple in this style. However, let's say that I put a magnet to it. You can clearly see that it is pink. I will say though that the amount of magnetic pigment seems to be less or just not as strong as it is in other polishes. A little tiny bit of a bummer, but also the direct light I noticed doesn't really help it much either. You can see how it pops a little bit more in indirect lighting. It's certainly there though. You can definitely perceive it in all lighting, but I think it's not as intense as it is in the other polishes. However, we're gonna force it through to the surface with a horseshoe magnet, and you guys, this polish is incredibly pretty. You can still notice how the magnetic flash is just not as vibrant in this one, but we can still definitely appreciate it. I'm not really sure what caused this. Maybe it was just purposely made to be less intense, but still, this is a favorite of mine of this collection. And with that, I think we can go ahead to my editing room and talk a little bit more about this collection. All right, so those were the swatches. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the prugly, which I feel like I have a little bit of each today. So let me start off with the Twisted collection, which blew my mind. I mean, I can't help but be reminded of the Illusions collection, which was also an amazing magnetic collection dropped from ILNP. This one is just as good, I promise you. They are super sparkly. They have excellent magnetic pigment to base ratio, if that makes any sense. So there is a nice pull there. I think that the one with the weakest pull would be Mood Ring for some reason. I don't know what is up with the pink in here. I mean, it's visible. I'm not going to say it isn't. It definitely is. But it's just not as strong as the other polishes in the collection. You'll still see it though. I don't want to discourage you from getting it if you want to get it, because yes, it is still visible, just not as strong. So if you had money for only one of these polishes, I would say go with Madhouse. And if you have money for two, just get a backup of Madhouse. Honestly, I think that if you liked any of these in my swatches, I feel like you'll love them in person. So that collection, they just killed it with that one. Let's talk about the Thorns collection now, which is where I have my brat and kind of like prugly takes. I personally was a bit disappointed with this collection just because I feel like it veered way too far into the blackened territory where, you know, there was a loss of color, at least when it comes to how my eyeballs register color, right? So when I initially got this collection, I thought to myself, well, man, this was kind of like the perfect opportunity for ILNP to drop a black jelly. Do we have a black jelly in this collection? No, but I mean, we also kind of got three here. That's just how dark they are, right? With the exception of Dahlia, with Dahlia, you can kind of like register some of that reddish tone and all of that. But, you know, let me just put it this way. If I wanted to wear a dark purple jelly, I wouldn't go for Nightshade. I wouldn't go for this one. But if I wanted to wear a black opaque jelly, then I would go for Nightshade. That is how dark these colors are. And even though the collection is not for me, it is definitely for those of you out there who really enjoy blackened colors in all the sense of the words, colors that once were and now are basically black. This is what this collection is. So both the Twisted and the Thorns collection drop on Friday, September 26th. So just keep that in mind if you are enjoying any of these. I think that's all I have to say about these. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's swatch sesh. I hope you have a great Halloween, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.